Okay, so we're now at that point in our app build where we need to add our Treeview control. But before we go charging off doing that, I just wanted to take you through an overview of the Treeview so we can get an appreciation of what we're going to try and do. And to do that, I've just taken sections out of the user guide just to talk you through. So let's have a look. What is a Treeview? Well, I think we've used them all our computing lives. The Windows Explorer is a classic case, but within Syspro, obviously the menu system, standard menu system is a Treeview, bill of material inquiry is a standard Treeview, and indeed the sample app for cocktails also shows the Treeview. The interesting thing within Syspro, of course, is that this is exactly the same control. So you can see that they've got icons at different levels, and you can work them out, you can change colors, and so on like that. So it is really a very, very powerful control. We just need to know how to populate it, and hopefully we can take advantage of some of these features. So basically what we're doing with a Treeview control is we are giving it a list of item elements, and each item that we give it is actually a level in the Treeview. As you add an item to a Treeview, the Treeview control allocates it a node index, a unique ID for that row, in which case it knows what it is, and we'll see us using that. For the root node, however, it always starts at index 1. It's the first element of the Treeview, and it has a parent attribute of 0, meaning it doesn't have a parent. It is the master parent in effect. And then all other items that we add must somehow belong to a parent. So as an example, if we have a look at this script here, I'm building an XML string. It has a root level called items. Here's an item, parent 0. Well, we know that this is the root, so it's called a bicycle. There's a key here called B100. And it's asking us for an icon ID. And then all the other items here have a parent ID of 1, because we know that this will have been allocated. So if we present this to the call out function called tree add items, then it will generate this. And we can see our bicycle at top level, and these are all our items. Behind the scenes, however, what is going on is this. So we can see our bicycle, we've got a parent ID of 0, it's been allocated node index 1, and it automatically says I have children because we've added it. All the other items belong to the parent, and then they are incrementally allocated their own unique node index. So we can see that here we are at level 14. So when we get to a point of saying, well, that's fairly easy for adding the first level, but how do you add multiple levels? Well, we do this by simply adding more and more children to it. So in this case, we can take our string, we still have our items, we still have our exactly the same syntax, but notice here that the parent ID has changed. And if we simply call Treeview tree add items again and present this to the control, it says, aha, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to add these 3 items to the parent node index 3, in which case it will do this. And behind the scenes, what it's saying is, well, the bicycle seat belongs to parent 1. It has a node index of 3. And these 3, the parent is 3, and their node index picks up from the 14, if you remember from the previous screen, 15, 16, 17. And it's as simple as that. Now, the big question is, how much of a tree view should you populate? Theoretically, there is no limit to the depth or the amount of data that you can throw at a tree control. You could build the whole bill of material tree control and present it in one great big XML string, and the tree view control would sort it out. However, you do get issues over or decisions to be made about volume of data and performance, and there's a big question of why would you want to drag huge amounts of data to a client if you're not going to use it. So typically one tends to add the children on an event. So typically the tree expand event. So when somebody in this instance clicked on the bicycle seat, it would fire a tree expand event, and then we would go and get the children and populate the tree view. So if we have a quick look at some of the event structure, you will be familiar with the on-user event because we've been using it throughout our courses. The event type will be a Treeview event. The event name, well, that's the name of the Treeview. Typically, you only have one on an app, so it doesn't really matter. The event ID, however, will be the events which are being fired. So we talked about a tree expand, so you click on it and you're expecting it to expand to the next level. Where there's a separate tree click. So in our instance, we'll be using that when we click on a customer, do something. And then a little bit later on in the course, we'll see that when we right-click on a customer, we can pop up a context menu as we're going along. Parameter 1 returns the string that is in the value attribute of the Treeview item. So if I just go back here, you can see value A101. So this is a stock code or something like that. So it will be returned in parameter 1. Parameter 2 holds the index of the item that fired the event. So in this case, if we're doing a tree expand, it would ultimately become the parent of the children that you're going to add. And then parameter 3 just gives you an indication of whether the item has children or not. Now, at first glance, the value looks like it can only have one value, like a stock code or something like that. But what you'll find is it takes a string, and if you need more than one value to be held there, then my technique is something like this. I just delimit them by a pipe sign, and then use VBScript split to split them into an array later on. So we will see this technique a little bit later on, where I specifically want to check that I'm clicking on a customer code and not something else. So there we go. Now, there's one other element that's quite useful with Treeviews, and that's the use of XAML. There is a call out called tree add XAML items, and we can embed a XAML string to change the look and feel, or look rather, of the element. So here, this string here will generate this look. So we've got bold here, we've got colors, blues, and so on like that. But there are one or two things that I want to just point out here. XAML, which is basically a forms-based string, is an XML string in its own right. And if you try to embed an XML string in an XML string, nothing is going to work because the parser will not be able to understand what bit of XML is for what. So then what you end up doing is having to change the reserved or special characters of XML into things like this. So a less than sign becomes an and sign, or ampersand LT semicolon, and the closing is ampersand LT semicolon, and so on, and it all becomes quite difficult to read. So what the app designer has provided you is if you are embedding XML in a tree control, if you put the squiggly brackets around the XAML control, app designer will substitute the less than and greater than signs for you, so that makes it easier to read. However, be aware that that's the only bit of substitution that it will do. So if you've got a customer name, for instance, in the demo data, we've got something called bikes and blades when the ampersand is in the middle of the name, that won't get substituted, and an ampersand is a reserved word in XML, and what you'd find is that nothing will work if you present an ampersand to it. So what you'll find is that we've included a VBScript snippet called check XML special characters. If you present it with a string, it will substitute all the XML special characters with the ampersand LT semicolons and things like that, and return you the string, so you can pre-parse it and embed it into things like this. So there we go. That's a rough overview of the Treeview. What we're going to be trying to do then is build up the items to present to our list, our Treeview to begin with. Okay, so we're now back in our app, and first thing we want to do is add the Treeview control, which is down here. Click on that, will give us the Treeview control popping up here, and there's a a bit of a sample of what it was going to look like. If we go to pane properties, we might just change this to customers. And there's very little for us to do at this stage because most of it's going to be in the code. So we're going to nip back into the code. Okay, now since we were last year, I've been adding a few bits and pieces because it's would take ages to type all this sort of stuff in. So the first thing here is basically a list of the alphabetic letters, which we are going to go through one at a time and create our items for our list view. I've got a couple of variables that I'm going to be using across the code. Here I'm just simply using the set variable call out to set some system variables that I'm going to be using across the whole thing. So if you remember from our getting started course, this will put these strings into the app designer, and it'll in effect create a global variable for me to use anywhere. This little bit of code just simply picks up the Windows temp directory, but for me, I actually have a shared directory with another laptop, so I'm just overriding that. Then down here, you can see I'm doing a log file directory, and up here, you can see that I'm controlling whether I output log files or not, so true or false, and we'll see that a little bit later on. I like to do this because if you build this in like this when you're developing it, then if you have a problem or a support problem, all anybody's got to do is turn this to true, and then it will start to produce your log files. And then, of course, if you are simply using the Windows temp directory in this manner, then you don't have to worry about whether there's a folder existing elsewhere. Anyway, so I have also added at the bottom a fairly set of standard functions I tend to use. Here's my write text file, which is there. Syspro check for errors. We'll be using this a little bit later on for checking whether we're getting any errors back from a business object, particularly looking for customers and things like that. We spoke about this in the Getting Started course, and we just briefly mentioned the check XML special characters. So this is a substitution of XML characters like ampersand, less than, greater than, with the relevant substitutions on there. And we'll be using that a little later on as well. So let's just add a few more bits and pieces in here. So let me just copy and paste stuff. Bear with me whilst I get this in here. So the first thing I'm doing here is I am picking up the value on the toolbar and popping it into a variable. The only trouble is because I'm copying and pasting, the pane name is different. So we'll just look for toolbar get value. So toolbar callouts here, and we get value here. So we can see that that's the value. I'm just going to cheat a little bit and copy that, put it there. You just get rid of that. At least I've got the name here. But fundamentally, what this is saying is, please go and get the value that's currently in the toolbar combo box and put it into my variable called list by. And now I'm calling a function, which I'll show you in a short while. I call populate Treeview. I'm passing it the alphabet and a list by into here. Now this is what I like to the way I like to write code is in small sharp chunks and passing variables between them. It's up to you what you do. So we'll just come down here and we will add populate a Treeview function. So bear with me whilst I get this from another laptop. So this is the beginnings of our populate Treeview. We'll be modifying this as we go along, but you can see I'm taking the alphabet, I'm taking my list by character. I'm just checking that if it's an A, then what I start to build, our root node, remember, our parent top level item, which we saw, and then I just simply nip over that alphabet from 1 to the end of it and build an item for each one. End the XML with the \items. If I've got my right log file to true, then it'll create a log file for me. this is extremely useful because if you get this a bit fouled up, it's very difficult to know where the problem is. So I output it to a file and then have a look at it. If you pop it into something like Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, you can have a look. You can look at the XML and it'll flag it up where the errors are and things like that. At the moment, I'm not doing anything with the geo area. I'm just saying, you know, you selected it and we'll add some code a little bit later on. And then at the end of it, what I'm doing is I'm just simply taking that Treeview XML and banging it into there. Again, this name will be wrong. So what we'll do is we'll nip along to the Treeview callouts. Treeview add items. There's our name. Now notice in this instance, and it's quite useful on a lot of the stuff that App Designer does, not only has it put the call out, but it's also given you an example of the XML string that's going through. Again, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to copy that, pop it in there. Just get rid of this little lot again. So what I'm hoping, if I haven't missed anything of my copying and pasting, is that on initialization, what it's going to do, it's going to pick up the A from the alphabet, and then it's going to run populate. Now, there's one other thing here which is useful, and that is if we nip up to the toolbar callouts here, we can do a set focus, and it will set focus onto our list by. I don't like the 1003s, so we'll pick this up. And we'll pop that in there. And hopefully, if I've got everything right, if we run our code now, and there we go. So what we've got is we've got our alphabet. Obviously, we'll do something in a minute on this. And it's gone down our alphabet and displayed it in our items. So the next thing that we're going to have to do is just wire up some of the events, and then once we've got that, and we'll do that with a few message boxes so we can see what's going on, we will then come back and sort out the geo areas and start to slowly work out what we've got to do when we expand the levels. Excellent.